But I am someone who cares a lot about technology's impact on people, particularly on youth. So I, together with my colleague Jeff Milner, run Hive Chattanooga Learning Community, Mozilla's network here in Chattanooga that brings together classroom teachers, informal educators like Rachel and the wonderful staff here at the Hunter to look at these issues of how technology can impact education and how we can really champion digital access, inclusion, and literacy. So that's sort of my lens, right? And I work for Mozilla, who most of you probably know from the Firefox web browser. It's been in the news a lot over the last 24 hours if you've been on Twitter. And Mozilla's whole mission is to promote openness, opportunity, and innovation on the web. So if you ask anybody who works for Mozilla or has been in this space a lot, we will tell you that 10 years ago, Mozilla saved the internet by launching the first version of the Firefox web browser. We gave people the opportunity to use a tool other than Microsoft, and we gave them the chance to create on the web by becoming Firefox contributors, which is a fully open source product, right? But 10 years later, it's my belief that the internet is really threatened. We're again at a really pivotal, potentially dangerous moment in the history of the web. The FCC, as you know, is currently considering regulations that might end net neutrality. That is the current status of the web where all content is treated equally. So my blog gets to you as fast as the New York Times, and videos about math and science get to you as fast as that lovely video about cats, right? Everything is equal, it's an equal platform. In the work Jeff and I do, we're always telling teachers that you cannot break the internet. Don't worry, code, make, hack, you can't break it. But I'm gonna kind of contradict myself because I think we are breaking it. In this conversation about web literacy and about the ending of net neutrality and the elimination of choice and freedoms we're seeing happening all over the world, on the web, we're really breaking this platform that's been the economic fuel of everything we've done for the last 25 years, right? It's a really, really pivotal moment. When you think about the internet, is it a utility like water, right? Or is it something like cable?
It should be considered a utility, even though perhaps it's not in our quarters.
Right.
If you live in Chattanooga, it's kind of a utility.
Right.
We are, in a weird way, this net neutrality test city. Does it work if we treat it like a utility, which I feel like a lot of people, argue it shouldn't be? And
Yeah.
we have a great example of a city that decided to treat it that way and has received a lot of, money and innovation, growth of the city, because we chose to treat it that way.
If you think about net neutrality, or the internet as a need, why then does net neutrality matter?
Because you want it to be as pure as, you want the cleanest water. You want the most
Right.
unfettered version of the internet.
Right, absolutely. So we've often talked about, I don't pay more to have clean water, right? We all get the same water regardless, for sure. But I've heard a lot of conversation about how you can't have net neutrality because it hampers innovation. What do you think underlies that belief?
So, there's a lot of money in saying that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be made in saying that.
Absolutely. So I think it's a conversation where we're talking about words like innovation and economics, and it gets scary for people. But you're right. I think we have a history as a country of often privileging some voices, perhaps with a lot of money, over other voices, as I think this photograph really powerfully shows. And I'm really concerned about bringing those old inequalities and injustices into the internet age in the 21st century, right? And I worry if we don't have net neutrality, whose voices get left out, and what that really means for the future of the web. The next billion users of the web, their experience is almost entirely controlled by Google, right? 98% of phones in the world are Android. Apple, and so people's experience of the web is increasingly limited. And in a way, it's sort of a form of technological colonialism, right? So you've got people all over the world having this experience, and all the benefits of that experience are being transferred to companies in California and here in the US. And so it's a really interesting thing to think about the next billion users of the web not having the same sort of equitable access that we've had. So without net neutrality, what do you think the web looks like?
Looks like what somebody else says it should look like. You lose that ability to shape your experience. It's one that's been curated and, in some cases, dictated for you. If you were one of those next billion users coming on in India or Africa, and the only access you have is through Google, through their phone, through, without net neutrality, the ads and the sites that when you look for something they say are the right sites for you to see, that really does stifle profoundly your experience.
It's exactly what's happening with the news. I mean, it's running parallel to that, where you have one company owning all of the media.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing.
It's a bizarre form of censorship because you're not protecting people from something that you shouldn't see or the content. It's what you want them to see.
So it's already kind of happening, but I guess if net neutrality does, if it becomes implemented or not implemented or whatever, where does that switch get put into place? Is it like on the internet service provider level, or is it like just through the channels like Google, or is it just like the priority bandwidth issues? I don't know.
It would be the internet service providers becoming able to pick the winners, or the content providers to be able to pay to be the winners. So in a way, it's a lot like thinking about government tariffs to support certain industries.
It's like, obviously we're aware of good things, and we have this sort of ideal way that we'd maybe like the internet to work, and what we're sort of seeing is the natural way that everything works is, bigger organisms, essentially.
And sort of
Power.
Yeah.
Power and greed.
As you're talking about what's the possible argument against net neutrality, when you're talking about those people who are going to come up with those ideas and innovate, when you kind of limit the group who can do that, who has access to the speed and the things necessary for that innovation, if you can't afford to innovate, then we lose this idea of potential, of upward mobility, there is a really interesting parallel with this, and that's a very scary idea, to say that this group can be, from this group we will pick the people who will lead and innovate, and I don't know.
So it is impossible to figure out who the innovators are at this point. So if you create that unequal platform, that unequal playing field, those ideas that might even be just the beginning of seeds of ideas won't have the opportunity to bubble up. And that's pretty scary for the future of the web. Again, the thing about these regulations is that if the FCC decides to support net neutrality, nothing changes, right? It continues the internet as the equitable playing field, equitable platform that we have had for 25 years, where those innovations have been able to spring up in dorm rooms and garages and offices.
When you say what you're asked what Chattanooga can do to steer or shape the conversation, do you think there's value in, rather than trying to take the conversation out of the political sphere, but to win that political conversation? Because as we're kind of talking in the abstract, and really, it's calling ending net neutrality, anti-capitalism or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's so ironic that a lot of people speaking out against net neutrality, it conflicts with their supposed fundamental beliefs,
Right.
of that lack of interference. But the rhetoric coming from them is just the opposite. I mean, so do you think? I guess my question is it really valuable to fight that fight, or is it? Do you think there's more value in changing the fight, or changing the conversation or taking it away from?
So my position walking in is that I would prefer to change the conversation, change the fight, but I'm not sure that that's realistic. If you have to meet people where they are, perhaps. But does someone else want to respond to that?
Make legislation, we can't ignore it. So if it's on the table, we could deal with it.
Right. To me, this is a social justice issue about access to a resource that has become a political conversation.
I mean, everything that you said is so true, that this notion that everybody who walks in the door of the public library has access to that kind of test environment, that place where they can be the next innovator. rather than just like a select few. It's a really special thing about Chattanooga that we should all be really proud of.
Yeah, I mean, I think as a city, if you didn't see the news yesterday, Mozilla did exactly what you're talking about and went up and decided to go with Yahoo as our default search provider. Oh. So we're again sort of creating that choice and opportunity on the web. And we're sort of not doing making the easy choices, and that's sort of what we've done as a city as well. We've made some different choices that really throw up against a wall of the Comcast, the other cable providers. And so I think we are an excellent test bed, and the Gig Lab is a great example of that, as well as all of our other Gigabit Fund projects about how we're using this resource. But also we have to continue to think about the digital access and equity piece here in Chattanooga, because we have this bandwidth, we have this remarkable network, and even if net neutrality remains the state of the internet, it's not enough to have the access, that equal access platform, unless we teach people how to communicate and be a part of that platform, right? So just having it is one thing, but teaching people how to become creators rather than just consumers of the web is so, so important as well. Because unless you give people and teach people the opportunity to engage, those voices get left out. As we've seen throughout our history, huge swaths of populations, not just in different countries or different states, but in different neighborhoods in our own city, getting left out of the conversation on this supposedly equal access platform. So my biggest takeaway from this conversation would be to support those programs in your community that are not only supporting net neutrality, but also teaching people how to become creators, not just consumers of the web.